I discovered the letter from the HOA on my doorstep at 6 in the morning. Just as I was heading out to check on the industrial fan heater I had parked in my driveway the night before. The letter was printed on cream-colored paper with an embossed logo that screamed self-importance, and the words inside made my coffee go cold in my hand. My name is Harrison Yates, and I had lived in the Meadowbrook Estates development in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, for 3 years without much trouble from our homeowners association. Sure, there were the usual complaints about lawn height and mailbox colors, but nothing like this. The letter stated in no uncertain terms that I had violated multiple HOA covenants by parking commercial industrial equipment in my residential driveway, and that I had exactly 48 hours to remove it or face fines starting at $500 per day. The equipment in question was a massive salamander propane heater, the kind that road crews use to keep asphalt warm during cold weather paving jobs. It was bright orange, mounted on a trailer chassis, and looked like something between a jet engine and a space heater. I didn't own it. The Lynn County Road Department rented it from my small equipment rental business, and I had brought it home the previous evening because my commercial lot was completely full with other equipment waiting for spring rentals. I stood there in my driveway, reading the letter twice, then 3 times, trying to understand the logic. The heater was going back to the county in less than a week. It wasn't permanent. It wasn't even mine in the traditional sense. But apparently, Brenda Carmichael, the HOA president, had different ideas about what constituted acceptable driveway decor. My phone rang as I was walking around the heater, inspecting it as if it might have grown more offensive overnight. It was Tom Henderson from the county road department. "Harrison, we need that heater back by Friday instead of next Tuesday," Tom said without preamble. "Weather forecast changed. We got a warm front coming in, and we need to get the repaving done on Route 30 before it turns cold again." "That's actually perfect timing," I said, explaining the HOA situation. Tom laughed, but it was a tired sound. "Your HOA doesn't know it's county equipment?" "Apparently not. They just see industrial equipment in a residential driveway. Well, it's legal for us to store it anywhere we need to. We've got the permits. That's county property being used for county work. Your HOA doesn't have jurisdiction over county equipment." I felt a small spark of satisfaction. "You mind putting that in writing? I'll do you one better. I'll come by this afternoon with the paperwork showing the rental agreement and the county permits. If your HOA wants to argue with the county, that's their problem." After Tom hung up, I went inside to get ready for work. My wife Sarah had already left for her nursing shift at Mercy Medical Center, but she had left a note on the kitchen counter asking about the letter. She had seen it too. I scribbled a quick reply explaining the situation and headed out. My equipment rental business, Yates Rentals, was located on the south side of Cedar Rapids, in an industrial area where nobody cared what you parked where. I had started it 5 years ago with a small loan and a lot of determination, and it had grown steadily. We rented everything from hand tools to heavy machinery, serving contractors, municipalities, and occasionally disaster recovery teams. The business was successful enough that Sarah and I had been able to buy our house in Meadowbrook Estates, which had seemed like a good idea at the time. The workday passed normally enough. I helped customers, coordinated deliveries, and did paperwork. But my mind kept drifting back to that letter and the principle of the thing. I hadn't violated any actual laws. The heater was temporary. And most importantly, it was county equipment being used for legitimate county business. Tom showed up at my house just after 4 in the afternoon, driving a white county truck with the official seal on the door. He was a big man with gray hair and the weathered face of someone who had spent decades working outdoors. He had a manila folder tucked under his arm. "Got everything you need right here," he said, handing me the folder. "Rental agreement showing you're contracted to provide this equipment to the county. County permit showing we have authorization to use and store county equipment as needed for road maintenance. And a letter I just had our county attorney draft explaining that HOA covenants don't supersede county operational needs." I flipped through the documents, impressed. "Your attorney works fast." She was already in the office, and she thinks HOAs are a plague on personal freedom, so she was happy to help. Tom grinned. "Between you and me, she's been waiting for a chance to put one in its place." "I appreciate this, Tom. I really do. Just doing what's right. You're providing us a service, storing our equipment, and some busybody wants to fine you for it. That doesn't sit well with me or anyone else at the county." He paused, looking at the heater. "Besides, that thing's been all over the county. We've had it parked at various locations for years. Never had a complaint until now." After Tom left, I made copies of all the documents and prepared a response letter to the HOA. I kept it professional and factual, explaining that the equipment was rented to Lynn County, that it was temporary storage for county property, and that the county had provided documentation showing their authority superseded HOA regulations in this matter. I delivered it to the HOA office, which was located in a small building near the community pool, just before 5 o'clock. The office was empty except for a woman I recognized as Patricia Morris, the HOA secretary. She was in her early 60s, with short gray hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. "Can I help you?" she asked, looking up from her computer. "I need to file a response to this violation notice," I said, handing her my letter and copies of the county documents. Patricia scanned the letter, then started reading through the county paperwork. Her expression shifted from neutral to concerned. Oh my. Brenda didn't mention anything about this being county equipment. Brenda didn't ask. She just sent the violation notice." "I see." Patricia made copies of everything and stapled them together. "I'll make sure she gets this first thing tomorrow morning. For what it's worth, Mr. Yates, this seems like a misunderstanding. I'm sure once Brenda sees these documents, everything will be resolved." I wanted to believe her, but something in my gut told me this wasn't going to be that simple. I was right. The next morning, I got a phone call at 7:30. I was at the rental shop, going through inventory lists, when my cell phone buzzed with a local number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Yates, this is Brenda Carmichael from the Meadowbrook Estates HOA." Her voice was clipped and sharp, like scissors cutting through paper. "I received your response to our violation notice, and I'm calling to inform you that it changes nothing." I set down my pen. "Excuse me. Your letter and these county documents don't negate the fact that you're in violation of our covenants. Section 12, paragraph 4 clearly states that no commercial vehicles or equipment may be stored in residential driveways. It doesn't matter who owns the equipment. Mrs. Carmichael, that's county property being used for county road maintenance. The county has legal authority that supersedes HOA regulations. That's your interpretation. The HOA covenants are legal documents that you agreed to when you purchased your home. You signed them. You're bound by them." My jaw tightened. "So you're saying you're going to fine me even though the county says they have the authority to store their equipment where needed?" "I'm saying that your driveway is not an appropriate storage location for industrial equipment, regardless of who owns it or why it's there. You have until tomorrow at noon to remove it or the fines begin, $500 per day. The county is picking it up Friday. That's 2 days from now. Then you'll owe $1,000 plus the initial $500 violation fee, $1,500 total. Her tone was maddeningly calm. Or you can move it to an appropriate location today and avoid the fines entirely. My commercial lot is full. That's why it's at my house in the first place. That sounds like a personal problem, Mr. Yates. The HOA has rules, and we enforce them equally for everyone. After she hung up, I sat there staring at my phone, anger building in my chest. This wasn't about rules or fairness. This was about control and someone's inflated sense of authority. I called Tom Henderson back and explained the situation. She's actually going to try to fine you, even after seeing the county paperwork. Tom sounded incredulous. That's what she said. Hold on, let me make some calls. 20 minutes later, Tom called back. Okay, I talked to our county attorney. She says the HOA can try to assess fines, but they're not enforceable. If they try to put a lien on your property or take any legal action, the county will intervene and file a motion to dismiss based on our authority. She's also going to send a formal letter to your HOA explaining this in legal terms they can't ignore. I appreciate that, Tom, but something tells me Brenda Carmichael isn't the type to back down easily. Then she's going to learn an expensive lesson about picking fights with county government. The county attorney's letter arrived at the HOA office by courier that afternoon. I know this because Patricia Morris called me at 3 o'clock, her voice shaking slightly. Mr. Yates, I think you should know that Brenda received the letter from the county attorney. She's not happy. She's calling an emergency HOA board meeting for tonight at 7 to discuss the situation. Am I invited? Well, it's a closed board meeting, but given that it's about your property, I think you have a right to be there. I'll send you the information. The meeting was held in the community center, a modern building with a large multi-purpose room that smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and stale coffee. When I arrived at 6:55, there were already a dozen cars in the parking lot. Apparently, news of the conflict had spread through the neighborhood. I walked in to find the board members seated at a long table at the front of the room. Brenda Carmichael sat in the center, a woman in her early 50s with shoulder-length blonde hair styled in a way that probably required significant time and product. She wore a navy blazer and pearls, and had the kind of expression that suggested she had never been told no in her entire life. To her right was Jeffrey Patterson, the vice president, a thin man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses. To her left was Karen Whitmore, the treasurer, who looked like she would rather be anywhere else. Patricia Morris sat at the end with a laptop, taking notes. About 20 residents filled the chairs in the audience area. I recognized most of them. Some nodded at me. Others avoided eye contact. This meeting will come to order, Brenda said, tapping a gavel on the table. She had an actual gavel. We're here to discuss the violation of covenants by Harrison Yates regarding unauthorized commercial equipment storage. I'm right here, I said from the back. And I provided documentation showing that the county has authority to store their equipment as needed. Brenda's eyes fixed on me with the intensity of a laser. Mr. Yates, this is a closed board meeting. Residents may observe but not participate unless called upon. This is about my property. I think I should be allowed to speak. You'll have your chance. First, the board needs to discuss the situation. She turned to the others. We've received a letter from the Lynn County Attorney's Office claiming that county operational needs supersede our covenants. I've consulted with our HOA attorney, and he believes this is incorrect. Our covenants are binding legal documents. The county has no authority to override them. Jeffrey Patterson cleared his throat. But Brenda, doesn't the county have certain powers regarding infrastructure and public works? Not in our private community, Brenda said firmly. This isn't a public road. This is private property governed by our covenants. The county can't just park their equipment wherever they want. Karen Whitmore spoke up, her voice tentative. The equipment is only there for a few more days. Is this really worth fighting about? It's the principle, Karen, Brenda snapped. If we allow one violation, others will think they can violate the rules too. We have standards to maintain. I couldn't stay quiet any longer. Mrs. Carmichael, with all due respect, this isn't a violation. The county has legal authority to store equipment necessary for road maintenance. Your attorney is wrong. Brenda's face flushed. Our attorney has 20 years of experience in property law. I think he knows more than a man who rents heavy equipment for a living. The room went silent. Several people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I'm not claiming to be a lawyer, I said, keeping my voice level. But I do know that the county attorney, who represents the entire county and has the authority of the county board behind her, says you're wrong. And when the county picks up that heater on Friday, this entire issue becomes moot anyway. Friday is too late. The deadline is tomorrow at noon. After that, fines will be assessed daily until the violation is corrected. Then I guess we'll see what happens, I said. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes, with various board members discussing the situation. Several residents spoke up, some supporting the HOA's position and others questioning whether this was really necessary. One man, Dave Sullivan from 3 houses down, pointed out that the county frequently parked vehicles in the area for various projects, and that this seemed like selective enforcement. Brenda dismissed his concerns with a wave of her hand. Those are county vehicles on public roads. This is private property in a residential driveway. When the meeting finally ended, I walked out into the cool evening air feeling frustrated and exhausted. This should have been simple. The heater would be gone in 2 days, and life would return to normal. But Brenda Carmichael had turned it into a crusade. Sarah was waiting up when I got home. She had made coffee, which was her way of saying she knew this was going to be a long conversation. "How bad was it?" she asked as I sat down at the kitchen table. "Bad. Brenda's determined to fine us, county be damned." Sarah sighed. "Can she actually enforce those fines?" According to the county attorney, no, but she can try, and it'll be a headache dealing with it. I ran my hands through my hair. I don't understand why she's being so stubborn about this. "Because people like Brenda need to feel important," Sarah said. "The HOA presidency is probably the most power she's ever had, and she's not going to let anyone challenge it. Not you, not the county, not common sense. Well, she's about to learn that there are bigger fish in the pond." Friday morning arrived, and Tom Henderson showed up with a county truck and a flatbed trailer to collect the heater. It was just after 8 o'clock, and I had deliberately taken the morning off work to be there. I wanted to document everything. As Tom and another county worker were loading the heater onto the trailer, a silver BMW pulled up to the curb. Brenda Carmichael got out, wearing expensive sunglasses and carrying a leather portfolio. "What's going on here?" she demanded. "The county is collecting their equipment," I said. "Like they said they would. It's past the deadline. You owe fines." Tom looked up from securing the tie-down straps. "Madam, I'm Tom Henderson with the Lynn County Road Department. This is county property and we're collecting it. There are no fines owed." "I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Mr. Yates. He violated HOA covenants and he owes $1,500 in fines." Tom straightened up, his expression hardening. "Madam, with all due respect, you don't have the authority to fine anyone for storing county equipment. We provided documentation explaining this." The county attorney provided documentation explaining this. "If you attempt to assess or collect these fines, The county will take legal action against your HOA. Brenda's face went red. Are you threatening me? No, madam. I'm informing you of the legal reality. You can't fine someone for something that's protected under county operational authority. We'll see about that. Brenda turned to me. You'll be receiving a formal fine assessment in the mail, Mr. Yates, and if you don't pay, we'll place a lien on your property. She got back in her BMW and drove away, tires squealing slightly on the asphalt. Tom shook his head. She's really going to do this, isn't she? Looks like it. Then she's going to get sued by the county. Our attorney doesn't make idle threats. The heater was loaded and gone within the hour, leaving my driveway empty and unremarkable. I thought maybe that would be the end of it, but I should have known better. The formal fine assessment arrived on Monday, certified mail. It was printed on official HOA letterhead and detailed the alleged violations, the fine schedule, and the total amount due, $1,500. It gave me 14 days to pay before additional late fees would be assessed, and potential lien proceedings would begin. I scanned the document and emailed it to Tom Henderson and the county attorney. Then I filed it away and tried to get back to normal life. But Brenda wasn't done. Over the next week, I received 3 more letters from the HOA, each one more threatening than the last. The first reminded me of the fine deadline. The second warned me that failure to pay would result in additional penalties. The third informed me that the HOA board had voted to begin lien proceedings if payment wasn't received within 48 hours. I called the county attorney's office and her assistant told me they were preparing a response. Miss Chen wants you to know that you should not pay these fines, the assistant said. The county will handle this. How are they going to handle it? Legal action against the HOA. Miss Chen is filing a motion for declaratory judgment and a restraining order to prevent them from placing a lien on your property. She's also considering a countersuit for harassment and abuse of process. That sounded serious, but I was relieved someone with actual legal authority was stepping in. The following Monday, 2 weeks after the heater had been removed from my driveway, I got a call from Patricia Morris. She sounded upset. Mr. Yates, I think you should know that the HOA just got served with legal papers from the county. Brenda is furious. She's calling an emergency meeting tonight. Am I invited? I think you need to be there. This involves you. The meeting that night was packed. Word had spread through the neighborhood that the county was suing the HOA, and everyone wanted to know what was happening. The room was standing room only. Brenda sat at the head table, her face tight with barely controlled anger. Next to her was a man I didn't recognize, tall and thin with a receding hairline and an expensive suit. He had the look of a lawyer who billed by the minute. This meeting will come to order, Brenda said, her voice sharp. We've been served with legal papers by Lynn County regarding the Harrison Yates violation matter. Our attorney, Mitchell Grayson, is here to explain the situation. Mitchell Grayson stood up, adjusting his tie. Ladies and gentlemen, the county has filed a motion for declaratory judgment asking the court to rule that the HOA's fine assessment against Mr. Yates is invalid. They're also seeking a restraining order to prevent the HOA from placing a lien on his property. Additionally, they've filed a counterclaim alleging harassment and abuse of process. A murmur rippled through the crowd. What does that mean for us? Someone asked. It means we have to defend against these claims in court, Grayson said. The county is arguing that their operational needs supersede HOA covenants and that the attempted fine assessment constitutes harassment. But we were just enforcing our rules, Brenda protested. Grayson looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Carmichael, I need to be frank with you. The county has a strong case. Their authority to manage public works and infrastructure is well established in Iowa law. The fact that the equipment was temporary and was removed promptly makes your position even weaker. So you're saying we should just let them walk all over us? I'm saying we should consider settling this before it goes further. Legal fees alone could cost the HOA tens of thousands of dollars. And if we lose, which is likely, we might have to pay the county's legal fees as well. Brenda looked like she had bitten into something sour. Absolutely not. We're fighting this. Jeffrey Patterson spoke up. Brenda, maybe we should listen to our attorney. If this is going to cost the HOA that much money, we need to consider our options. Our option is to stand up for our rights and our community standards, Brenda said firmly. If we back down now, we're setting a precedent that anyone can ignore our rules as long as they claim some government authority. Karen Whitmore shook her head. But Brenda, this isn't about ignoring rules. The county provided documentation showing they had authority. We chose to ignore it. We chose to enforce our covenants, which is our job as a board. I stood up from my seat in the back. Mrs. Carmichael, this is ridiculous. The heater is gone. It was only in my driveway for less than a week. You're going to cost the HOA thousands of dollars fighting a battle you can't win over something that's already resolved. Brenda's eyes locked on mine with pure venom. You're the one who caused this problem, Mr. Yates. If you had simply followed the rules and stored your equipment properly, none of this would be happening. It's not my equipment. It's county equipment. That's the entire point. You chose to bring it to your home. That was your decision. A decision I had every legal right to make. Mitchell Grayson cleared his throat. Perhaps we should continue this discussion in executive session. There are legal details that shouldn't be shared publicly. The board voted to go into executive session, and everyone except the board members and their attorney had to leave. I walked out with a group of neighbors, several of whom approached me in the parking lot. Dave Sullivan clapped me on the shoulder. Sorry you're dealing with this, Harrison. Brenda's lost her mind. She's always been intense, but this is next level, said Jennifer Martinez, who lived on my street. I can't believe she's going to spend HOA money fighting the county. It's not her money, I said. That's the problem. She's not personally paying for this, so she doesn't care what it costs. Over the next month, the legal situation escalated. The county filed additional motions. The HOA hired a second attorney specializing in constitutional law. Board meetings became war rooms. And the neighborhood divided into factions. Those who supported the HOA's right to enforce covenants, and those who thought Brenda had gone too far. Sarah and I found ourselves at the center of neighborhood gossip. Some people stopped talking to us. Others went out of their way to show support. It was exhausting. Then something unexpected happened. It was mid-March, about 6 weeks after the heater had been removed, when Tom Henderson called me with news. Harrison, you're not going to believe this. Brenda Carmichael called the county offices today and filed a formal complaint claiming that the road department has been illegally storing equipment throughout the county without proper authorization. You're kidding. I wish I was. She sent a 10-page letter to the county board alleging multiple violations and demanding an investigation. She's trying to build a case that the county has been abusing its authority. Can she do that? She can file whatever complaints she wants, but they're not going to go anywhere. The county has documented every equipment storage location, and they're all legal. But it shows how far she's willing to go with this. She's obsessed. She's desperate. Her attorney must have told her their case is weak, so she's trying to create a different narrative. The next day, the Cedar Rapids Gazette ran a story about the dispute. A reporter had gotten wind of the situation and written a piece titled HOA battle with county escalates over equipment storage. The article was surprisingly balanced, presenting both sides of the argument, but it made the whole situation very public. That evening, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends, family, former customers, everyone wanted to talk about the article. Some supported me. Others thought I should have just moved the heater to avoid all this trouble. Sarah read the article at dinner, shaking her head. "We're in the newspaper because of a heater. I know. This is insane. I know. When is this going to end? I don't know." But the end was closer than I thought. 2 days after the article was published, I got a call from Mitchell Grayson, the HOA's attorney. He asked if we could meet in person. I agreed, curious about what he wanted. We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. Grayson looked tired, like he hadn't been sleeping well. "Mr. Yates, I'm going to be blunt with you," he said after we sat down. "Your HOA is going to lose this case. The law is clear. The county has authority here. I've told Mrs. Carmichael this multiple times, but she won't listen." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because this has gone too far, and someone needs to be the adult in the room. The HOA has already spent $15,000 in legal fees fighting this, and it's going to get worse. If this goes to trial, we're looking at $50,000 or more. And when we lose, the county is going to ask for their legal fees too, which could be another $30,000. I let out a low whistle. That's a lot of money. It's catastrophic for a small HOA. Your neighborhood has what, 200 homes? That's a huge special assessment per household to cover these costs. And for what? Because Mrs. Carmichael couldn't admit she was wrong. What do you want from me?" "I want you to agree to a settlement. The county drops their suit. The HOA drops the fines. Everyone walks away. No winners, no losers. I never owed fines to begin with, I know. But if we can settle this, we can stop the bleeding. If it continues, the HOA is going to suffer real financial damage, which means every homeowner in your neighborhood suffers." I thought about it. Part of me wanted to see this through to the end, to watch Brenda Carmichael face the consequences of her stubbornness. But the rational part of me knew that hurting the HOA meant hurting my neighbors, people I lived with and cared about. "I'll agree to a settlement on one condition," I said. "The HOA has to formally acknowledge that the county has authority to store equipment as needed for public works, and they have to issue a written apology for the harassment." Grayson nodded slowly. "I can work with that. Let me talk to the board." The emergency board meeting was held 3 days later. This time, the room was even more packed than before. The Gazette article had raised awareness, and people wanted to know what was happening with their HOA. Brenda sat at the head table, looking like she had aged 10 years in the past month. Her usual polish was gone, replaced by dark circles under her eyes and a tension in her shoulders that suggested she knew what was coming. Mitchell Grayson stood and addressed the room. "The board has been in discussions with both Mr. Yates and the county attorney's office regarding a potential settlement of the pending litigation. The settlement terms are as follows. The HOA will withdraw all fines and violations against Mr. Yates. The HOA will issue a formal acknowledgement that county authorities have appropriate jurisdiction over county equipment storage for public works purposes. The county will withdraw all legal actions against the HOA. Both parties will release all claims and bear their own legal costs." "No," Brenda said suddenly, "I don't agree to this." Jeffrey Patterson turned to her. "Brenda, we discussed this. We all agreed." "I didn't agree. I was outvoted." "Then the board's decision stands. We're moving forward with the settlement." Brenda stood up abruptly. "Then I'm resigning from the board, effective immediately. I refuse to be part of an HOA that doesn't stand up for its own rules." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Patricia Morris looked like she might cry. Karen Whitmore was staring at the table. Jeffrey took a deep breath. "Your resignation is accepted. Thank you for your service." Brenda gathered her papers, shot me a look of pure hatred, and walked out of the room. The door slammed behind her. The settlement was finalized 2 weeks later. The county dropped their suit. The HOA issued a letter acknowledging county authority and apologizing for the conflict. Mitchell Grayson sent me a copy with a handwritten note. "Thank you for being reasonable. You saved your HOA from bankruptcy." But the story wasn't quite over. About a month after the settlement, on a warm April afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a woman's voice, professional and clipped. "Mr. Yates, this is Detective Laura Manning with the Cedar Rapids Police Department. I need to ask you some questions about your HOA's financial records." My stomach dropped. "What's this about?" "We've received a complaint about potential embezzlement. During the audit following the legal settlement, some discrepancies were discovered in the HOA accounts. Can you come down to the station?" I met with Detective Manning that afternoon. She was a woman in her 40s with short, dark hair and the kind of direct gaze that made you feel like she could see right through you. "Mr. Yates, I want to be clear that you're not under investigation," she said as we sat in a small conference room. "We're investigating your former HOA president, Brenda Carmichael, but we need information from board members and residents. What kind of discrepancies are we talking about?" Detective Manning pulled out a folder. "After the settlement, your HOA hired an independent accountant to audit the books. They discovered that over the past 3 years, approximately $80,000 is unaccounted for. The money was withdrawn in small amounts, typically under $500 at a time, using an HOA debit card that only Mrs. Carmichael had access to. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. She was stealing from us. That's what we're investigating." The withdrawals were categorized as various HOA expenses, but there are no supporting receipts or documentation. "We're tracing where the money went. What do you need from me?" "Any communications you had with Mrs. Carmichael? Emails, letters, text messages? Anything that might show her access to and control over HOA funds?" I provided everything I had, which wasn't much. But over the next few days, Detective Manning interviewed dozens of residents and board members. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Brenda Carmichael had been HOA president for 4 years. During that time, she had gradually consolidated control over the finances, pushing out anyone who asked too many questions. The treasurer, Karen Whitmore, admitted that she had raised concerns about documentation multiple times but had been shut down by Brenda, who insisted everything was fine. The accountant's audit revealed that Brenda had been using HOA money for personal expenses. Restaurants, shopping, even a vacation to Florida. She had been careful, never taking huge amounts at once, but over time it added up. The police executed a search warrant on Brenda's home and found boxes of receipts and bank statements that confirmed the embezzlement. She had been using a separate bank account to funnel the money and had been living well beyond what she and her husband earned legitimately. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning. I only knew about it because Dave Sullivan texted me. "Police cars at Brenda's house. Something big going down." By evening, it was all over the local news. Former HOA president arrested for embezzlement. The story detailed the alleged theft, the amount involved, and the investigation. Brenda's attorney issued a statement saying she maintained her innocence and looked forward to her day in court. The neighborhood was in shock. People who had supported Brenda, who had defended her aggressive enforcement of HOA rules, suddenly felt betrayed. Those of us who had questioned her methods felt vindicated but also sad that it had come to this. The legal process took months. Brenda was charged with first-degree theft, ongoing criminal conduct, and forgery for falsifying HOA documents. Her attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the county attorney's office, already frustrated with Brenda from the earlier dispute, pushed for significant penalties. In September, nearly 7 months after the heater had been removed from my driveway, Brenda Carmichael stood in a Lynn County courtroom and pleaded guilty to multiple felony charges. The judge sentenced her to 5 years in prison, with 3 years suspended, meaning she would serve 2 years. She was also ordered to pay full restitution of $80,000 plus court costs. I attended the sentencing hearing with Sarah. We sat in the back of the courtroom and watched as Brenda, looking smaller and older than I remembered, accepted her sentence with no visible emotion. Her husband sat in the front row, his face buried in his hands. As we left the courthouse, Sarah took my hand. "I feel sorry for her husband, me too." "Do you think all this started because of the heater?" "No," I said. "The embezzlement started years ago. The heater thing just brought attention to her behavior. If it hadn't been that, it would have been something else eventually. Still, if she hadn't been so stubborn about it, if she had just let it go, maybe the audit never would have happened. Maybe. But then she would have kept stealing, and who knows how much more she would have taken." The HOA slowly recovered. Jeffrey Patterson became the new president and immediately implemented new financial controls. All board members now had access to the accounts, and monthly statements were distributed to every resident. The HOA hired a professional management company to handle day-to-day operations, removing the possibility of one person having too much control. The legal fees from the county dispute were paid off through a special assessment, which worked out to about $200 per household. People grumbled about it, but most understood it was necessary to clean up the mess. The restitution from Brenda, when it eventually came, was put toward replenishing the HOA's reserve fund. Life slowly returned to normal. Sarah and I continued living in Meadowbrook Estates, though we occasionally joked about moving to a neighborhood without an HOA. My business continued to thrive, and I made sure to never again park county equipment in my driveway, even though I was legally allowed to do so. Some battles aren't worth fighting twice. The following winter, Tom Henderson called me about another equipment rental. The county needed the same industrial fan heater for a project on Highway 151. "We can store it at our facility this time," Tom said. "Don't want to cause you any more HOA trouble," I laughed. "I appreciate that, Tom, but honestly I think we're past that now. Still, better safe than sorry." Though I have to say that whole situation was the most excitement the road department had all year. We still talk about it at meetings. Glad I could provide entertainment. More than that, you stood up for what was right even when it got messy. That's worth something. After we hung up, I thought about everything that had happened. What started as a simple dispute over equipment storage had spiraled into legal battles, embezzlement charges, and a prison sentence. It had been exhausting, frustrating, and at times surreal. But through it all, I learned something important about homeowners associations and the people who run them. The rules and covenants exist for good reasons, to maintain property values and community standards, but they're only as good as the people enforcing them. When someone like Brenda Carmichael uses those rules to feed their ego or cover their crimes, the entire system breaks down. Jeffrey Patterson proved to be a much better president. He was reasonable, transparent, and willing to admit when he was wrong. Under his leadership, the HOA became less about enforcement and more about community. We started having neighborhood events again, People talked to each other, and the constant tension that had defined Brenda's tenure gradually faded away. One Saturday afternoon in early spring, about a year after the heater incident, I was washing my car in the driveway when Dave Sullivan walked over with a beer in each hand. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing me one. "Thanks." I took a long drink. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion. Just wanted to say I'm glad you're still here. After everything that happened, I wouldn't have blamed you for moving. We thought about it. Sarah looked at houses in Marion for a while, but this is home. Why should we leave because one person couldn't handle power responsibly?" Dave nodded. "Fair point. Still, it took guts to stand up to Brenda like you did." "I didn't do anything special. I just didn't back down when I knew I was right. That's more than most people would do. Easier to just move the heater and avoid the hassle. Maybe. But then Brenda would still be stealing from us, and who knows what other crazy violations she would have invented. Sometimes you have to draw a line." We stood there in comfortable silence, drinking our beers and watching the neighborhood. Kids rode bikes in the street. Someone was grilling in their backyard. A dog barked in the distance. It was perfectly ordinary, and after the chaos of the past year, ordinary felt like a blessing. That evening, Sarah and I sat on our back deck watching the sunset. She had made iced tea, and we were sharing a bowl of pretzels. "Do you ever think about how different things might have been?" Sarah asked. "Different how?" "If you had just parked the heater at the shop, if there hadn't been room in the driveway, if the county had picked it up earlier. Any of a dozen small things that could have changed everything." "Sure, I think about it. But then I remember that Brenda was already committing crimes before I ever parked that heater in our driveway. The investigation would have happened eventually. Maybe we just accelerated the timeline. You think she regrets it?" "The embezzlement or fighting the county?" "Both." I considered the question. "I don't know. Some people never really accept responsibility for their actions. They always find a way to blame someone else or justify what they did. From what I heard, Brenda's still claiming the audit was biased and that she was framed. That's sad." "It is, but it's also not our problem anymore." Sarah smiled. "No, it's not. The next morning, I had a meeting at the shop with a potential new client. A construction company from Iowa City wanted to establish an ongoing rental relationship for various projects. It was the kind of business opportunity I had worked years to develop. The meeting went well. We discussed terms, negotiated rates, and shook hands on a preliminary agreement. As I walked them out to their truck, one of the representatives, a man named Carl, paused. "I read about you in the newspaper last year," he said. "That thing with your HOA and the county." My stomach tightened slightly. "Yeah, that was quite a situation. I thought you handled it well. Stood your ground without being a jerk about it. That takes character. It's one of the reasons we wanted to work with you." I was surprised. "Really?" "Sure. In this business, you need people you can trust. People who do things the right way even when it's difficult. That article told me you're that kind of person." After they left, I sat in my office thinking about Carl's words. All the stress and frustration of the previous year suddenly felt worth it. Not because I had won or because Brenda had gone to prison, but because doing the right thing had mattered. It had affected how people saw me, how they wanted to work with me, and ultimately, how I saw myself. The final chapter of the story came in November, almost 2 years after the heater incident. I got a letter from the county attorney's office informing me that Brenda Carmichael had been released from prison after serving 18 months. She had earned time off for good behavior. The letter also noted that she had a restraining order preventing her from contacting me or Sarah, and that if she violated it, I should call the police immediately. I showed the letter to Sarah that evening. "How do you feel about that?" she asked. "Honestly, I don't feel much of anything. It's done. She served her time. Now she has to rebuild her life and we get to keep living ours. Do you think she'll come back to the neighborhood? No. I heard she and her husband sold the house while she was in prison. They moved to somewhere out of state, Michigan, I think. Good. I know that sounds harsh, but I don't want to run into her at the grocery store. I don't think that sounds harsh at all. We never did see Brenda again. The HOA continued to function smoothly under Jeffrey's leadership. New families moved into the neighborhood, including a young couple with twins who bought Brenda's old house. They were nice people who had no idea about the drama that had happened before they arrived. Life moved forward as it always does. My business continued to grow. Sarah got promoted to head nurse in her department. We talked about having kids. We planned vacations. We lived our lives. Sometimes when I drove past my driveway, I would remember that bright orange industrial heater and everything that followed. It seemed almost surreal now, like something that had happened to someone else. But the lesson stayed with me. Stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Don't let bullies intimidate you into backing down. Trust that the system, for all its flaws, usually works in the end. And understand that sometimes small acts of principle can have larger consequences than you ever imagined. The industrial fan heater was just a piece of equipment. But what it represented, the conflict it sparked, and the corruption it ultimately exposed, changed everything. It changed our HOA, our neighborhood, and in some small way it changed me. I learned that you don't have to be loud or aggressive to stand your ground. You just have to be persistent and trust that truth and law are on your side. I learned that people who abuse power usually have something to hide. And I learned that communities are resilient. They can survive conflicts and come out stronger on the other side. Years later, I would tell the story to friends and business associates, usually over drinks or dinner. It became my go-to story, the one that illustrated something important about standing up for yourself. People were always surprised by how it escalated, how something so simple became so complicated. But that's life, isn't it? We never know which small decisions will become defining moments. We never know which battles will turn into wars. All we can do is try to act with integrity and hope that's enough. The industrial fan heater taught me that lesson. It cost the HOA thousands of dollars, sent someone to prison, and became local news. But it also showed me that ordinary people can make a difference when they refuse to be pushed around. And really, at the end of the day, that's what mattered most.